Okay, we can begin. Thank you so much for being here, our valuable observers and participants and audience. Really appreciate you taking the time on this Monday morning to be here. The title might sound a little bit technical, but I'm so very happy to have these three illustrious panelists here with me on stage. Charlie Betts is the managing director of the Betts Group, I believe 9th generation.
That's right.
Leading the company, and you're also managing director of SMO Gold. Apologies. Ed Johnson, who is the corporate responsibility director at Gemfields, and his career is focused on knowledge, ethics, and integrity. And last but not least, Guya Merkle, who's the founder of the Vieri fine jewellery brand, and also founder of the Earthbeat Foundation. And I think your kind of tagline or your motto is, how can we use our resources to create real change? So one of the topics today is going to be about real change, because I think all three of you are very passionate about impact and have really pursued that in your careers. The title of our talk today is Trust but Verify, How Standards Can Add Value to Your Business. And the title may assume that standards are the thing we should do, but I think we'll get into this during our conversations, that standards are not necessarily always what we should aim for. There's different types of standards. Too many standards may also become confusing for the trade and also for end consumers. So these are some of the topics that we want to navigate today. And I'd like to begin with Ed, given that you're a miner. So we start really on the ground. From a corporate mining perspective, why is responsible mining important, and what does it mean? We hear this word so much, this term so much, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. And thank you for Laurent and INHORGENTA for inviting us to be here. Just a quick aside, I haven't been back to INHORGENTA since before the pandemic, so it's nice to see the continued strength of the German market. It's also nice to see a small area over there dedicated to those that are quote unquote sustainable. Obviously, I would like to see the whole floor covered with businesses that are quote unquote sustainable, but from small seeds, large oak trees grow. So I'm pleased to see that new area, and thank you to INHORGENTA for supporting businesses that are demonstrating they're resilient for the future, which I believe sustainability is about. Coming to your question.
And where do you mine? Maybe you can also...
Yeah, I'll give a brief introduction for those who don't know about Gemfields. Gemfields is a colored gemstone miner and marketer of colored gemstones from Africa. We own two leading colored gemstone mines, the Kagem mine in northern Zambia, Emerald Mine, and the Montepuez Ruby Mine in northern Mozambique. Both of those two are significant producers of ruby. I think at latest analysis, MRM produces about 50 to 60% of the world's ruby, and Kagem Zambian Emerald Mine produces about 25 to 30% of the world's emerald. So obviously we're on the ground. What does responsible mining mean to us? Gemfields was founded 20 years ago, and I think when we went through the process of setting our corporate values. Now, we're a large-scale miner, so some of what we do might not be appropriate for those who source from ASM, artisanal and small-scale mining. But for us, obviously, as a large-scale company, you have to set your values. And I think our values really talk about what is responsible mining. Transparency, I feel number one, all right? The ability to answer questions if people come to you and ask about how you operate. You are willing to answer and you speak the truth, not what the customer wants to hear. So I think transparency is a critical foundation in responsible mining. Then also we would say also legitimacy. Now that means you need to have a legal license concession to mine granted by the owners of the land, which is de facto the government on behalf of the people. Now that leads into a conversation with all my colleagues who focus on ASM, because oftentimes, for good reason, ASM is not licensed. It might be illicit, it might be unlicensed, therefore that might translate into illegal. Obviously, let's not unpack that further here because it's sometimes necessary, so not always a negative. But essentially, I think to be responsible, you need to be legal. You need to follow the laws of the country. The laws are there for a very good reason. So legitimacy, I would say, is the second pillar of responsible mining. Then the third really is integrity, and it translates to, if I'm saying something here, I can back that up with fact. It's not just something I felt like saying, because it sounds good for us to be able to sell, all right? So that, for me, is 3 pillars of responsible mining. Obviously, I can layer down beneath that, but I think those are the 3 critical pillars for us that enable people to denote themselves as responsible mining. Then, if I can presage the sort of following questions a little bit, you need to verify what you're saying, and then that obviously gets into the standards that we follow. But I'll talk about that maybe later.
Yeah, and we'll talk about impact also later on, because you're not just mining for the sake of mining. You're mining and you want to leave behind a positive impact. Charlie, you launched SMO, which is called Single Mine Origin, with no price premium. So quite a radical take on this whole thing. What is SMO, and how have you selected the mines that you're working with?
Okay, so Single Mine Origin is about supplying responsibly sourced gold at scale. And a bit like Ed, we all love to talk about 3 pillars. We've got 3 pillars as well, and SMO is built around full traceability, transparency, and responsibility. So very, very briefly, traceability, we believe that if you can't trace the material to its source, you can't hold that source accountable. So we have a totally segregated supply chain through the LBMA refinery. We send in auditors because we don't trust, we have to guarantee that that is segregated. Responsibility, we don't want to create another standard, and we might talk about the sort of proliferation of standards later. So we just say, if we're sourcing from a large scale mine, we want to see a standard in place, and that might be the responsible gold mining principles or the IRMA standard that I know Gemfields are very closely involved with. That's probably the highest standard you could get within gold mining, and that it's not really possible yet to source from a large scale mine with that standard. And the third one is around transparency, and I think this is absolutely key. So we've built a database of over 200 large scale gold mines globally, and we have a benchmark of ESG data for disaggregated at mine level for all those gold mines. So we look at what's their carbon emissions per ounce of gold, what's their percentage of local and female employment, what is their social spending per ounce of gold that they're producing. And to come back to your question, that's now how we would choose a mine. We would look at that ESG data, transparency, look at how it compares to other gold mines regionally and globally, and we want to be sourcing from the best mines. So currently the majority of our gold is coming from a mine called Bellevue in Western Australia, which is the most renewably powered off-grid mine in the world, and it's achieved net zero last year. I know that's a contentious claim, so we probably won't unpack that, but it is invested hugely in renewable energy. We source from a mine called Sabodala in Senegal, which has really incredible social impact in terms of the amount of money they're spending in developing local communities around the mine.
And maybe because we had a panel discussion yesterday on ASM Gold and Gems, you and your company, you continue to also support and you also provide a responsible ASM Gold. So this is not about excluding ASM, it's just about bringing a more scalable model of responsible gold to the market. Absolutely not. Yeah.
And so our ambition is never to transfer a jewelry customer from using fair trade or fair mine gold to SMO. It's saying everybody should be engaged now in the provenance of their material, because you can be, right? These solutions are out there. We're past the time where it was too difficult to do this. So gold broadly is, split into recycled, large scale, and ASM. I think fair trade and fair mine represent best in class for ASM sourcing. I think within recycled, there's a whole nother debate there, but I think for me, it's about understanding the provenance, not just sticking a label on it, saying recycle from what, was it really a waste? And within large-scale mining, this is 70% of global gold production. Let's not just lump it all together and assume it's the same. There are fantastic players within that space, and there are really terrible players within that space, and that's what we want to shine a light on.
Okay, thank you. And Guya, from a jewelry designer's perspective, you have your brand that you've been leading for a number of years. How sensitive are luxury customers to verification or standards, audits versus storytelling, something that might be a bit more authentic, a bit more emotional? You're selling jewelry in the end. You're not just selling a piece of paper. And where's this line between trust and proof? How are these conversations with your customers on a daily basis?
Yeah. First of all, of course, jewelry is always kind of a luxury product. But if we are looking really inside a luxury consumer, so really spending a lot of jewelry for big pieces, I think the problem is that they don't know anything about the problems we're facing in the value chain of jewelry. So there is not a real knowledge about it. And that's why, of course, they don't ask for a lot of labels or verifications or deeper looks inside what is going on for the moment. Of course, they want to have a good feeling when they buy their jewelry. And that's why, of course, verifications, labelings are working quite well. So if there is a label onto it, let's name it made out of recycled gold or made out of ethically gold, it's enough for them. They don't ask further because, of course, they don't know the complexity of the whole value chain. And I think there's a big problem when we come to the storytelling part of selling jewelry, because it opens up a huge market for greenwashing, of course. I mean, if we would look onto the market from a perspective where we don't know a lot about the value chain, everybody would say, wow, the jewelry industry is doing quite good, because there's not a single brand out there not claiming that they are responsible or ethical or whatsoever. So the customers are feeling quite safe. And I think that's a huge problem when we're going a bit deeper on labeling, verifications, standards, that there's kind of this, companies, they know that they have to do something, but because the customer is not really asking for it and is not really pointing their fingers in how do you say that? You know what I mean? So it hurts. There's not a lot of movement, and then we stand still with the verifications or the standards we have, which is what we all know, not enough to really change on a global perspective a whole value chain. And we need to do it, but what I'm missing is really, and this is a bit what I try with Vieri, to not only sell dreams and desires and emotions, which jewelry is always linked to, but to kind of educate. And this is sometimes difficult, because if you educate too much, people go away. They don't want to hear these stories. And of course, maybe they don't have to get the full knowledge package of what is going on, but to take them on this journey, we have to talk a bit about the problems we are facing and the challenges we are facing. But like the real consumer of luxury goods don't want to go too deep inside. And this is kind of a challenge, I think.
And do you think customers are asking more now compared to 10 or 20 years ago? I think the assumption has always been that all customers want something sustainable or responsible, but then in the end, that doesn't seem to be the case once they get into the store. They also trust the brand, and it's more about the jewelry first. So are these questions coming more?
I think the questions on a surface are coming more, because of course customers nowadays are more involved into problems we are facing on a sustainable part, but they're not digging real deep. And this is, of course, I mean, I understand, because it's such a complex, and nobody is really talking about it. I mean, we are in the industry, of course, talking about it, but to the outside, we don't have, like, our politicians, it's not really on an agenda, because in comparison of other industries, of course, the jewelry sector is quite small, but again, we need to. We are now in the jewelry industry, but when it comes to gold value chains, it's not only the jewelry industry behind it. It's also a huge financial, industry behind it. And I think we need to tell more the true story and to involve the customer more, so that the pressure towards the big companies gets a little bit more fiery.
Yeah. Okay. Ed, you've been digging deep, to use Guya's words. When deciding about standards, how do you distinguish those that create strategic value and impact versus perhaps more bureaucracy? And I'm not being cynical about standards, but I think it's important to have that conversation. You're not going to want to be certified by all standards out there, right? So how do you go about choosing this?
So I think firstly we have to separate out between standards with a capital S, those mechanisms out there that company use, and standards with a lowercase, i.e. you've just got good standards as a business, all right? And I think most people out there, when you're investigating a new supplier, you can tell whether they have standards that meet yours. You can immediately tell when you're talking to somebody and asking questions as to whether they align with your values. And everybody's got different values as to what motivates them to buy, whether it's as a consumer or whether it's buying from your suppliers here to feed your retail business. So I would consistently argue that we all need to raise our standards, lowercase and uppercase. So when we look at how we raise our standards as a large-scale mining business, we obviously have, as you say, a plethora of choices, all right? So we already align against 2 standards that we operate, and I'm going to use acronyms that you've probably never heard of. Firstly, as a mining business, we've been aligned against 3 different ISO standards, the International Standards Organization. Maybe you've heard of ISO. So those are fairly common. We've both of our mines are ISO certified 9001, 45001, and 4501. So those cover different aspects of our production, but it doesn't really enable us to tackle the root causes of what we face. And one of the main challenges that we face in our ruby mining, and so the answer essentially to your question is we choose a standard that allows us to make it work for us to fix problems, all right? And in Mozambique, we have a significant problem around our ruby mine with illegal mining, all right? This morning, our daily situation report noted 1,300 illegal miners on our concession digging in extremely unsafe conditions, controlled by illegal syndicates for the rubies that otherwise we would bring to market, export transparently, and bring full taxes back to the people and employ the 1,500 people at our mine. So obviously, as a large-scale miner, we do not see illegal mining as benefiting the country or the people of the country. It benefits a small segment, mainly those who are corrupted by people in the supply chain. All right. So obviously we would like to work against illegal mining. And one of the areas we do that is alignment with a standard called the VPI, the Voluntary Principles Initiative, which enables us to make sure that we follow a set of security guidelines so that any interactions between our security staff and the illegal miners are done with respect to their human rights. Okay? Because obviously if they're trying to dig for one of the world's most valuable rubies, most valuable gemstones, and we're trying to protect that asset, you can lead to situations of tension, shall we say, all right? And tension can lead to acts that maybe don't respect people's human rights. So we have to follow that to make sure that all of those incursions onto our license are done protecting our people, but also respecting human rights. So that standard allows us to fix, hopefully on an ongoing basis, to the best of our ability, that problem. Then the third standard, which Charlie talked about, is one that many of you might have not have heard about, but the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, IRMA. You may have heard of RJC, Responsible Jewellery Council. They have a booth over there in the sustainability section. That's the dominant standard for the gems and jewelry supply chain. I think it's a fantastic standard. I used to work there, so I have some knowledge of it. It's a great standard, allowing people to trust their suppliers, all right? We're a miner. IRMA is a mining standard. It enables us to differentiate between any other mine and a responsible mine. And so IRMA is a new wave. There's a couple of big mining standards. Charlie referred to one, the gold mining principles. There's a new consolidated one, which is incorporating that together. But we found that to allow us to continually improve along a number of different areas, and IRMA has about 428 different criteria that we have to demonstrate improvement and positive action against. So it's very extensive. It's taken 3 years. The audit starts next month. And we choose that principally because it's a stretch target for us and it allows for continual improvement.
And it's a journey, right?
It's the proverbial journey of continual improvement, absolutely.
And Charlie, when you launched SMO or you thought about SMO, were you thinking of it more as a brand or a standard? I'm assuming you didn't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely not.
How did you kind of navigate that world? Because I imagine that some of the mines that you've selected, they're not certified in the same way or may not follow the same standards. How?
Yeah, I mean, we very explicitly did not want to create another standard. So it was about, I always think about this as, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. What we're trying to do is shift thinking, shift the market, and influence minds to behave better, more responsibly. So, what we don't want to do is I would love to insist that every mine we sourced from, gold mine, had the IRMA standard in place. I think it's a very, very thorough standard. But there aren't any large-scale gold mines that have done that because of the cost and the work to put that in place. I'm hopeful that there will be shortly, and we will source gold from those mines. But what we want to look at is, the standards to me represent permission to play. You need to operate responsibly. You need to operate within your licenses, considerate of your environmental and social impact. But then beyond that, it's about looking at transparent data for all these mines and comparing it. And for me, a standard is a really important tick box, but it's the start. And actually real objective analysis of how a mine is performing at a mine site level, not a corporate level, is where we can start to drive change.
And you're offering a responsible business model, right? I mean, you're offering a market for responsibly produced gold. So I'm assuming that also in this long-term commitment and engagement and relationship that you have with the mines, on this journey, they may be interested then in certifying themselves further, or they see that there's a real business case to do this because you're selling the gold afterwards.
So I think it's a virtuous circle for our mining partners. So they can see that by hitting a high enough bar for us to source gold from them, the benefit for them is significant exposure. Mining is not a very sort of sexy industry in terms of exposure. The jewelry industry gets incredible exposure. So we've demonstrated in the last 5 years how a really well run, responsible mine making a social impact can suddenly get the oxygen of incredible publicity through Vogue or the New York Times and so on. Jewelry brands actually talking about where they're sourcing the gold. And that has a knock-on effect to those mining businesses. So what we want to create is a competitive environment where those mining businesses think, God, actually, we need to raise our standard and get on that program.
Can I just add something to that before? I mean, obviously there's a different perception at the retail counter, but I think for the two of us, a lot of it is about. I often look at why we do standards as coming under 3 headlines. One is meeting customer expectations. All right. I mean, we don't sell our product to consumers, so it's bought by companies that choose to buy Gemfields rubies or Gemfields emeralds. All right. So we have customers, and they have expectations. And they want to see the businesses that they source from aligned against standards. So that's often the driver. That's the business ticker. But what we found, as we've really dived into aligning against standards, and I think it was what you were alluding to there or talking about, is actually the main benefit has been to improve our performance. All right? We set into it thinking we've got to do this because our customers are asking us to align against the standard. But actually what we found 3 years in is our ability to meet that transparency pillar, which we both agreed is kind of key for responsible mining. We're able to give the data on how we're performing really easily, all right? And then that means when investors want to come in, they've got the data easily and they make decisions whether they invest in your mine or not. So, and it's different at the retail end. So I just wanted to come in.
And I think, Guya, when you founded your brand, you were thinking about it differently. You just integrated sustainability into your jewelry brand. You didn't even think that it was something you had to do. Or like this idea of having a separate sustainability area. We had this conversation yesterday. The idea should be that everybody has sustainability within their business and there's no need for an extra area. So how have you kind of navigated this since you founded your brand? And do you think that too many standards can also dilute trust and create confusion? Shouldn't everybody be responsible or sustainable? It shouldn't even be up for discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for me, I think impact is key. So this is what my brand is doing. With every piece of jewelry we sell, we create impact in the countries who are are facing the problems. This can be closing a mine and bringing alternative income solutions. This can be improving mining sites, whatsoever. There's not a solution that fits to everything because it's very individual where the mine is, where the community is, how big are the communities, etc. I see standards very difficult, I have to say, but for me, like standards like the Responsible Jewellery Council, for example, this is for me not a standard we need to talk too much because for me it's the baseline. Every company should fit this standard because, and it's not sustainable, it's just the baseline of what we're doing. Because what we see, and this is, of course, I have the brand and the consumer perspective, but I'm also traveling to the ground. And, I'm doing this now since 12 years, and I see, of course, there's a lot of improvement. I love fair trade, fair mind. Every standard is doing on its own the best they can and really improve things. But if you're traveling just to somewhere in Uganda, you still see people lock down the mines 24 hours. You still see child labor. There's a little shift, but you don't see it on the ground so much. So we're having a problem, although we are facing tons of standards and labelings and organizations, which is all great, but we need as a company, as brands, and that's why I'm always trying to convince the big houses not only to, change is not done by reporting. Change is done by going there and creating impact and taking your damn responsibility as someone who is working in this industry. Point. And this is what I'm still missing. And I think that standards and too many is holding it back because we're all hiding kind of a bit behind all the standards, and that's why there's not so much.
Well, or another example, what I often see on websites is jewelers saying, "Oh, we have only KP certified, Kimberley process certified diamonds."
Yeah.
That's the legal minimum. It's not even the legal minimum. That's
the
following
legal
the
minimum.
law.
Exactly.
Ed, is there a point where too many standards begin diluting trust? You have a background in jewelry and gemology as well. I'm just thinking of the ring. A ring has diamond, gold, it has rubies on it. Yeah. You're like, okay, this ruby came from Gemfields, it had IRMA, it was ISO, it's RJC, the gold is SMO. Coming also back to Guya's point, where too much information can sometimes confuse the customer. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I hear your frustration. I mean, standards are not one size fits all, and they're not perfect, all right? We just look at what we need to do as a business, and we align against a standard. That's our approach and need as a large-scale mining business, all right? Yeah, I mean, we're in danger of ending up with that alphabet soup of acronyms at the sales counter, which is absolutely not helping anybody. But I think essentially what I would like to see, and yeah, we're all aligned with this everything should be sustainable approach here at the show, is everybody trusts everybody else. But it's not just based on the words that they say. It's the fact that, listen, I've got this logo behind me as I'm saying it. That means, because the critical point, which I haven't quite heard, so I want to be the first to bring it up, the real benefit of a standard or a leading standard, it's a third-party verification of what you do. All right? Otherwise, it's just me telling you that I'm a handsome man with a full head of hair when I've got my camera turned off on Teams, right? Which we all know is not true, right? So It's about somebody, third party, actually coming in, and despite what you say you are, they verify you are doing that. And obviously a standard has a set of criteria. They can be quite simple, you know? There's a leading diamond price list. Rappaport, all right, who's launching a new green gems initiative. And it's got 3 very diluted criteria for what they will consider to be green gems in their system. I won't say standard. That's progress, all right? It's very easy to comply with, in my view, all right? But that's better than just saying, we're responsibly mined, trust me, with nothing behind it. And the problem with that is when you do that, some consumers and some NGOs and investigative journalists dig behind that claim, and when they find something different, not just that jeweler damages the trust that they have, it damages trust of the whole sector. So we have to back up what we're saying at the sales counter.
Well, that's the problem, is there's so much mixed in the sustainability or responsibility arena with trust, verification. We talked about impact. Standards can have impact, but they may not necessarily always have impact, or impact can be both positive and negative. It's quite complex, and that's why you've explained it very well also on, we're talking about trust, but verification, this idea of third party.
And I think a standard is only as good as you make it work for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a tick box. And then it's pointless, really. It just satisfies your customer, and you're deluding yourself and your customer. So if you choose to set high standards, capital S, lower s, find a way to demonstrate that. Third-party verification is what we do as a large miner. There are other ways.
How is this for you, Charlie, for you and your customers, given that you have different options to offer them? I guess you have gold that is non-SMO as well. You have fair mine, you've got many different options.
Yeah.
How do you bring them through on this journey if they come and see you and they're...
So we try and educate our customers, and then we try and let them make their own choices. So, we try to be agnostic and say, these are the options. Different brands have different motivations. Some brands really want to use recycled only and want to drive towards net zero. Fantastic. Others really care about the impact. The point is, genuine harm is absolutely still being done in the gold supply chain, whether it's environmental damage, mercury degradation, human rights abuses. So this isn't just a nice to have. It's actually, jewelry is an incredibly, emotive product. You don't want it associated with those kind of things. So jewelers are too busy to do the kind of in-depth analysis that we would do or that Gemfields would do. So you have to rely on a standard, and obviously there are too many and they're too complex for most jewelers. So, but just saying this is all too much, I'm not doing any of it, isn't going to work.
Do you have customers that follow a certain standard or take a certain gold and then don't put that on their website?
Absolutely.
So somebody would ask the question, they would give that answer, but they're essentially trying to avoid this confusion of lots of logos, labels and whatnot. So they're acting good, but they're not. So
to give a sort of case study of that, because I know they don't mind me talking about it, Boodles, which is a major UK jeweler, they were examined by Human Rights Watch, 7-8 years ago, and they were basically found to not have enough answers about where did their precious metals come from in their jewelry, where did their gemstones come from. And they approached us and said, we want, as a defensive strategy, we need to have the answers to, as a luxury brand, we have to have the answers to these questions. And they introduced single mine origin across all their jewelry, but they didn't talk about it. For years, they didn't talk about it. And then actually, they then started to talk about it because they realized there is an alignment between doing the right thing and doing the most profitable thing. And they started to see this actually it's quite a useful sales tool to be able to say, that beautiful engagement ring you're buying, here's a QR code. This is where the component parts came from. And you can dig in as much depth as you want into the data around what's going on in that mine, what's going on in that local community. And I think increasingly that's quite powerful.
Yeah, and there's different ways of doing it. So every brand might do it to suit their own brand identity, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and they might not want to talk about it at all because it can be, all those letters can be a real distraction. And it's perfectly sensible to just do it because it's the right thing to do for your brand, because your brand is so valuable.
And that's what you've tried to do, Guya, also with your Earthbeat Foundation. I mean, you haven't just gone for one standard or one certificate, one logo, and then I'm ethical, I'm sustainable, that's it. How's that been for you?
For me, it was the perfect fit because the Earthbeat Foundation was first, and then I created my jewelry business around it. And for me, it's perfectly fine because I see my responsibility a bit also in educating the customer and doing this direct impact and seeing both sides really helps me a lot to navigate through all of it. Of course, it's also kind of frustrating because sometimes things are not solving the way you wanted to have it. But I think for the customers, it's great because we tell the story of the value chain and the problems, but of course always with a kind of positive income because we are already creating so much impact, and they have this feeling that they are part of it, which helps. So they are very proud when they wear their jewelry because they know that there is something bigger behind it. So this is what works for me. Again, I think there's not this one way to sustainability or responsibility in the gold value chain because it's super complex. But at least I think everybody should take its responsibility and yeah, I mean we need to. Have human rights, environmental things within our value chains. And what I would love the industry more to really, I mean, we are doing it. This was what we were talking about. We are all aligned when it comes to what is the status quo, what are we need to do. But the industry itself, we need to talk more honestly. We need to talk about gold in Congo, Dubai. We always sneak around it, but those are huge topics. We need to face and find solutions for it, and we only can do this as an industry. It's not about having it's not about how do you say that. Having it as a POS for your. It's really about moving as an industry towards this.
Ed, a controversial question. Who should pay for verification? Because if we want to get out of this situation that Guya was talking about, we need more transparency, and verification is one way to shine more light on these things. Who should absorb that cost?
Well, the mine has to, really. It's just a question of whether they pass that on with some kind of ESG premium in the pricing, all right? We don't set our prices. We operate by an auction system, so our customers choose what price they pay for our gemstones. So we can't really price it on, okay? But I mean, essentially what some brands do is they bear the cost, and I think the person producing has to bear the cost of the verification that I'm trustworthy to buy from. That's part of your business, all right? Whether they choose to pass that on in a percentage, and whether the consumer or the customers or the consumer choose to pay that, that's debatable. I don't think consumers should pay a penny more for responsibly sourced material. That's my position on that. I think they should trust that jewelers are doing the right thing. The jewelers absorb the cost and then see the benefits that brings to their business.
How do you see that, Charlie? You're not passing on the cost for the SMO gold. How is the cost of verification being absorbed?
It's being absorbed across the supply chain, and I think as a manufacturer, so when we supply to jewelers, we absorb that. And I think I agree with Ed. I don't think the end consumer can be expected to bear that cost. But I think for jewelers and jewelry manufacturers, there is an economic benefit for this, for us in this. It sets our product apart. It makes it more valuable and more desirable. So I think it's okay for, you look at something like fair trade and fair mind again. Look, there is a premium in that, but there's a very, very good reason for that premium. And personally, I think that, I'd love to see a sort of greater bifurcation in that pricing. Like, this is responsible gold. It's worth more. It's doing more good. It's a more desirable product. And, we're not there yet, but I don't see why we shouldn't get there.
But Guya, the beauty of jewelry is it's not a commodity. So when you sell a ring, it has a price. You can't compare it necessarily with the ring of another manufacturer. This idea that somehow a responsibly manufactured ring with stones would be 10% more expensive, is this something that customers are sensitive to? Or do you, in your experience, we should get rid of this idea of a premium for a responsible product and it's just, this is the price of the ring, this is what you're getting, this is how it was manufactured, and that's it? What is like the psychology of the consumer?
I think both. I really agree with you, and we are also absorbing the costs for the impact part, for example. This is something we are doing as a company, and of course it makes my product more valuable, and that's why I get customers, so my business is working better because of this whole impact part. I think there are customers who would be willing to pay more for a product like this. So this is not what it's about, because then they kind of be very proud. But I think, to see it more in a future way and on the whole industry, at one point, if you ask me what I would love to have in the future, that there is no, it's just, responsible, and there's no premium here and there. It's just that we are, I know it's delusional, it will not happen, but this is what I would love to see. Because I think to have it like in these two sides, there is the premium good jewelry and there's the cheap not good jewelry. It's part of the problem. We need to go through a vision for it all. But I would say that there are consumers who would be willing to pay more for it, absolutely. Yeah.
Ed, what do you think also with your experience in the colored gemstone space? We had this conversation with Marcelo also yesterday about, he tells a story, he does good work on the ground in Brazil, but it doesn't necessarily trickle through that story all the way to the end consumer.
Yeah, I've always looked at, a lot of us here are trying to drive change within the gem and jewelry supply chain, all right? Because improvement's needed. And, Human Rights Watch report in 2018 forced change in one leading British jeweler. So, there are positives to people looking around the industry and pointing holes at what's happening. Gemfields has had a bumpy journey as well with our human rights records, and that's led us to really significantly improve our controls, all right? So these things happen, they're complex supply chains. The challenge is when the consumer hears about them, sometimes it's much more nuanced than it can be conveyed, all right? So if we're really working hard to make sure, as you kind of say, there's a level playing field, everybody's operating responsible. Yes, it's a dream state, but we can all dream, all right? We're creating improvements all the time because more people are understanding that there's value for them as a business in following some sort of standard. Again, uppercase, lowercase, right? And we're all trying. For me, it's about a rising tide lifts all ships, all right? We're all working towards that because we can see the financial benefits. The challenge is when the consumer, who's going to drive the change here? Because the consumer's not really asking the questions. You asked, do people come into your store asking for responsibly sourced jewelry? Your brand is built about being responsibly sourced. 99% of jewelry purchases start online, all right? So they look online, see what your values are. If there's nothing about sustainability or responsibility, guess what? They walk past your store, all right? So the stores that people say nobody's asking about it, it's because people aren't walking in, all right? Because they've already made their mind up online, because you're not engaging in the conversation. The conversation is complex though, all right? It's not nuanced black or white, good or bad, responsible, irresponsible. There's a whole bunch of gray. So when you follow a standard, maybe you choose to put it on your website somewhere. They see that stamp, Fair Trade, IRMA, RJC, SMO. That leads to the start of the conversation. That brings them into your store. They're then not going to ask, where does your gold come from? Because they've already seen it, all right? So when you apply a standard, you're bringing in more business from people who want to align with your values.
Charlie, a question. You were telling me that you take clients and also press on some of the trips to visit mines, including in Senegal. What, beyond audits and compliance, what does meaningful impact look like for you, but then also when you present it to these people that you bring to the mine? What are their expectations? Is it about doing no harm, or is it about actually leaving a positive legacy?
I think more the latter. Look, I think taking people on those kind of trips is incredibly powerful because we have to define responsibility objectively. We have to look at the standards. We have to look at the data. But actually, there's also a narrative behind that, and you can't really read that narrative from a load of, benchmark figures. So, for example, when we went to Senegal and you go and show people some of the outreach projects that are going on, the health clinics that are being built, and they presented to us when we were there the data, the reduction in infant mortality, the reduction in malnutrition in children. And you can see on a page in front of you, this is the number of lives being saved by the outreach work in the community that this mine's doing. So for me, that's the motivating impact, and that's where you can really bring this to life, which is why I think it is valuable to actually take people to see it on the ground, because you can look at carbon emissions on a piece of paper and it's not going to set your pulse racing, bluntly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Guya, I mean, you touched upon this before. 5 years from now, what would show that standards certifications have actually real value? Like when you were talking about Uganda before, what would the real value and real impact look like?
For me, the only value would be that we really see change on the ground. That this is the only thing I would say shows us that things are improving. No paperwork, nothing, really on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ed, any thoughts from Zambia or Mozambique?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're a dominant mine in the area in which we operate. We have competitors, either known competitors or illegal miners, all right? So obviously what I would like to see is that rising tide lifts all ships approach, The illegal mining situation in Mozambique, the illegal mining situation globally, especially with the rise in the gold price, is a significant issue now for miners. And it's often controlled by gangs and organized crime. All right, illegal syndicates are controlling a lot of the delivery of our minerals. Think about the coltan in these, right, from DRC. So that's why I believe in standards, all right, because it's going to lift everybody's tide, and those ships are all going to rise. So I would like to see the illegal mining situation reduced. I don't think we're ever going to stop it. Corruption and poverty are a significant challenge. And that's what drives it. But and then I would like to see from other miners that operate next to us, that operate according to different standards. I would like to see our customers who choose to buy from them, because the material looks the same but is cheaper. All right. I would like to see their standards improve. All right. Because then there's a level playing field.
What about you, Charlie? 5 years from now, many more SMO mines, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see, like I mentioned before, this sort of bifurcation of pricing where gold that has no responsibility and provenance attached to it is effectively discounted. I don't think that's realistic. So really, I'd like to look at our benchmark of, it has a very good picture of global gold mining, and I'd just like to see those figures shift, more investment in local communities, better recycling rates, more local employment, reduction in carbon emissions. I think the data is there, being collected, being audited. We will be able to see this change happening, and I think it is going to happen, but it would be nice if it accelerated.
Is a high gold price actually conducive for this to happen? Or
well, look, these guys are all making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's an easier sell.
Yes.
Can you invest more in the local community? Well, look at your balance sheet, look at your profitability. So yes, I think it's good.
Yeah.
It makes it harder for jewelers. It makes it harder for where you have where you're trying to persuade. If for example, again, the fair trade, fair mine argument. These gold prices are eye-watering for jewelers. Any kind of premium is very difficult to swallow. But as a percentage, the premiums are getting smaller.
Yeah.
So,
Can I add one thing? Maybe we're wrapping up, but just as a call, I was told this morning by my new friend from Informer Markets, the Hong Kong show, that today in Chinese culture is Human Day, or it's the 7th day after Chinese New Year, which was Monday, Tuesday. So it's the 7th day after, and in Chinese culture, today is Human Day. So it's basically the birth of humanity. Thank you, Liz, for that point. So, what would I like to see in 5 years? I'd really like to see the fact that jewelry consumers are choosing to buy gems and jewelry because the companies selling it to them can demonstrate that they're helping society. All right? And we've got every possibility to do that. You know, you've got 3 people here who are striving to do that. We just call on more people to be involved in that, because consumers are going to respond to that. We're all human, all right? And we want to see that the products we buy improve society. And jewelry's got a fantastic opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's perfect final thought. Thank you so much, all 3 of you, for participating. If there's a question from the audience, or the few questions.
We got time, have we?
I mean, there's nothing afterwards, so we've got time now.
Thank you very much. My name is Florian from Fairever in Germany. We are a precious metals trader specialized on responsible sourcing. And in our daily practice, we get a lot of questions around standards and certifications. We believe that strong standards and third-party certification is very important, because otherwise anyone could claim anything. And just a remark, because there are so many standards and a lot of them are really weak in our opinion, and just a few are really strong. So just a suggestion for every jewelry buyer or gold buyer: if you have someone in front of you who wants to tell you how great their standard is, ask them the question, does it help me to trace this material back to the original mine? The first question. And the second question, does this acting according to these standards improve the state of the world in any way and the living reality of people on the ground? And if they cannot answer both questions positively, honestly, after doing this for 10 years, I don't see a lot of point in it.
Thank you.
Can I touch, it wasn't a question, but can I take it to open up the conversation? You know, traceability is critical, obviously, and you said it. Unless you know where your material comes from, you can't measure the impact, all right? But I don't think, Florian, I totally respect your view, but I don't think traceability is the only issue and necessarily the first question. I mean, it's important, yes, okay? But I mean, I had a situation here, and I'm not going to name the company, where I saw a stone out here in Hall C1, and it was in a box, and it said Mozambique. It was a ruby, and it said Mozambique. And I asked the seller, which mine does it come from? Because, you know, we know the mining there. It either comes from Gemfields, it comes from Fura, another licensed mine there, or it comes from the illegal ruby mining supply chain, all right? 2 are good, 1 not so, all right? So I asked, which mine? And he said, oh, no, it doesn't come from Mozambique. It comes from Madagascar. And so a lab that they sent it to said Madagascar. Said Mozambique. But they know it's from Madagascar because they sourced it from there. So they're going with telling the consumer that it's from Mozambique, because that's the dominant brand name right now for rubies, when they know it's from a different source. All right? So without naming the company, they're lying, and they're showing a lack of integrity right there at the point of sales. Anybody can do that with traceability, all right? So I guess your point is the standard allows you to identify where it's coming from. In gold, it's maybe possible. In colored gemstones, it's extremely difficult.
But what you're describing there is not really traceability, it's just lying.
Yes, but, and with respect, I think the integrity needs to increase for many people in the industry, because many people say it comes from somewhere that's different to where it actually does.
Yeah, I would love us not to need traceability. My view is traceability acts as an absolute magnifying glass for ethics. And if you can't see through the supply chain, you just can't really have that much confidence. So, you know, I really respect the LBMA's responsible sourcing standard. They're trying to make all the refineries really verify the sources of the gold. But to my mind, it's just not enough, because you commingle all that gold at the refinery, you've lost the traceability, you've lost the control, the auditability, and if you have a bad egg in that batch, well, you know, you've messed up. Yeah. So I within gold, for me at the moment, traceability is absolutely crucial, and I hope we move beyond that.
But I think, Ed, I mean, just to come back to Florian's point, maybe we can agree to say that if you don't know where something comes from, and you said this as well, you can't really make any claims. So the beginning, it may not be that it's the absolute top priority, but you don't know what that map looks like. If you're just like, okay, it's a ruby or it's gold, it could come from anywhere in the world. And what I also see in gemstones is people saying, oh, the sapphire comes from Sri Lanka, so it must be ethical because they've got really great laws. It's not because you have a traceability, for example, of a country that takes all the boxes. And that doesn't mean that we should have full traceability going to every mine for every single product, because sometimes it's too complex or too expensive or too cumbersome. But it is a direction. The more you know where it comes from, the more you can say about it and back up those claims.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, traceability is critical, all right? But I think we've got to, at the moment, we talk about country in colored stones and often sometimes in gold. We talk about country, and there's a big difference between two mines in one country next to each other. All right. So our position on traceability at Gemfields is you should talk about company or mine of origin, single mine origin, all right, instead of country of origin, because then you can really get back to actually measuring that one mine and that company. All right. When people just say, and so I know you're talking about gold, totally different to colored stones. All right. But it's the aggregation that causes the simple challenge. And when we've got to feed quite a large supply chain, that aggregation sometimes is necessary. You were alluding to that with LBMA, all right? So traceability does not equal good responsibility.
And probably because you have an Australian mine that's part of SMO, that's a great mine, but not all mines in Australia may be that great, right?
No, I mean, Australia has a pretty robust mining code, so I don't think you're likely to find large-scale mines that are, committing horrible abuses. But the reality of a fantastically run, renewably powered mine is great, but it's not going to have a very powerful social impact. So you can't just say, let's only source our gold from tier 1 jurisdictions where we're not worried about human rights. We want to have positive impact. So you need to go to the difficult countries and create change.
Yeah, if there's still a second. My name is Marcin Pieszak from Alliance for Responsible Mining. And to follow up on impact, and you mentioned that word, lifting all the boats. But listening to you, I'm slightly worried that, the narrative can kind of be developing towards, we've got these, very efficient, large-scale mines, and the rest is kind of, either illegal and dodgy. And I don't think it's very helpful in kind of understanding what the situation really is in the world, and remembering that 80% of employment in terms of gold production still comes from these artisanal and small-scale miners who can maybe be informal, maybe they don't have all the paperwork, but a lot of them are legitimate. So the question to you is, how can we ensure that we are not kind of putting one against each other, and really develop both products at the market and collaborations at the mine sites and in the countries of production, where we can add value together and we can collaborate, rather than creating a kind of a narrative of conflictivity and opposite.
Marcin, we've spoken about this before, so let me be clear to everybody, all right? ASM is a way to improve sustainable development around the world. It is critical that we have to come to terms with how it's done. If I speak about illegal mining, all right, there is a clear separation for me as a miner between ASM and illegal mining, all right? We agree on that point, all right? So sometimes the conversation and the discussion, which sometimes turns to an argument, all right, is which is better? Like it's a binary approach. It's just not, all right? It's which method of bringing a material to market creates more impact, and which one can demonstrate that impact, all right? With much ASM, it is necessarily hidden. It's not transparent, it's opaque. And that's about finding routes for a lot of ASM, especially gold, to be licensed, to be legal. That's the work that you're doing and that many others are doing. And we fully support that at Gemfields. What we face is, because of corruption and poverty, thousands of people onto our concession every day, attacking my colleagues to get hold of the extremely expensive material. That's not ASM. That's organized crime. All right? So let's separate out between that I would say if somebody's buying one of those rubies from Mozambique where they don't know where it's from, i.e. which producer, there's a potential they're causing social and environmental issues. All right? And so let's be clear on that. And I often have discussions, people don't like me using the term illegal mining, but when we're in mining conferences, that is the biggest challenge facing miners.
Hi guys, thanks very much. So I own a bespoke jewellery business in Surrey. I bought it 2 years ago. I'll be honest with you, the jewellery business that we operate, we buy from our suppliers just as it's always done. There's no kind of thought about provenance and where it comes from, being 100% transparent. Being new to the jewellery business, like when I hear these words, responsibly sourced and fair trade, to me right now, it doesn't mean a lot to me because we just buy it from our suppliers as we've always done. And when we buy it, you've got a choice. For some of them, do you buy it ethically or do you buy it just normal? We don't get customers asking us for fair trade or ethically sourced or anything like that at the moment. I'm a big believer that education is how you understand what it means, right? We all need to be educated. Right now, I'm uneducated as to what this means, what bad looks like and what good looks like. How do I educate myself as a jewelry business owner, and how do I educate my customers on this so that it's something they want to choose? Because right now, for me, it's just a label and a price difference. It means very little to me.
May I say just something?
Yeah.
And I don't want to go very deep because you are the experts here, but I want to say that I really thank you for your approach right now, because what you are saying is, I would say, 95% of the jewelry industry, with the difference that nobody's talking about it that clear. And I really think that's the absolute beginning. And if everybody would act like you, just saying, I don't know about it, my customers are not asking for it, for me, it doesn't mean a thing. That would be, or this is the beginning we all need in this industry. So thank you very much for being that honest and asking this question. I think this really means a lot for me, because I think one of the biggest problems we have in this industry is not talking about anything. So, and now I give to the experts.
To jump in there quickly, I'd like to echo that. A lot of the time we have these talks and you're talking to a highly educated and, we're preaching to the choir. So it's nice to have somebody who's, this isn't your area of expertise. All I'd say is, I believe when companies go down this journey of scrutinizing the supply chain a bit more, I think there are benefits to your business. And in terms of educating yourself, look, as I'm to do the plug, Betts Group, last month produced a brochure saying, where does my gold come from? And it explains all the different options and what they mean. So I'll just send you a copy, and that's a step one.
Which is nice to understand where your gold comes from. That doesn't mean that's not an empowering enough reason to go, oh, that's nice, it comes from this mine here.
Yeah.
For me, I need to understand why I shouldn't be buying this over here.
Yeah,
I don't have that at the moment, right? It's gold. Gold is gold, right?
So if you want, you can come with me to Uganda visiting illegal gold mines. And I'm pretty sure if you witness this yourself, you're running towards sustainable
I would love to.
behavior.
Honestly, I would love to go and see that.
No, it's really, we're going there in September. We can change, and then I'm happy to take you with me.
And I think that's really important. I mean, we need jewelers to go to the source of their material, to understand the challenges that those mining them and the communities around them face on a daily basis. All right? To answer your question from our perspective as a supplier into the supply chain, all right, of material that might end up being sold in your store, it's about doing due diligence. Due diligence is about asking questions of your suppliers. If the questions don't come back to you with answers that you believe and trust, then make your choices, all right? I gave the story about a supplier in there that's selling a stone the answer that I got did not match my values. So I'm not going to buy from that company. All right. So if you have values as a company, we've both sort of talked about ours, and we try to live those. So set your values about what you want to source, what impact you want to make. There's that dream state of consumers wanting to buy material that benefits society. Visit mines and ask questions of your suppliers. And as the title of this says, trust what they say, but get verification of it as well.
Which sounds great in paper, right? Like I want to do that, but there's a gap between why should I? Because I don't fully understand what the issue is. It's just titles and labels and names, right? Words like fair trade. The actual reality of what the difference between what an ethically sourced means compared to an unethically sourced. It doesn't actually mean anything except for a price tag right now. I've been completely...
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important to, if you want to deep into it, which would be important, because we're really talking about 25 million or even up to 100 million people working under the baddest conditions for an industry which sells dreams and emotions. And you know, we have huge problems. Gold is paying for conflicts, like for wars. And we are responsible for it as an industry. So it's more kind of, I think, the first step to connect with the why is it important is the first step. And then there are, of course, a lot of opportunities and possibilities where you can act to. But if it's something you would love to connect even more with, I'm sure Florian will take you to a mine as well, to really see by yourself, because this is when I'm on panels and you have all of this business, social responsibility managers. I think the difference always of how much you give into it is, are you doing this because you saw it, you're really emotionally also attached to it, or do you just see the figures and the calculations behind it? So it's really an invitation. Here are a lot of people who could take you to mines and show you the reality. And I'm pretty sure that you understand why it's so important.
And I think the other aspect is to secure the sustainability of your business going forward. All right?
Absolutely.
Because you're right. If you feel your customers are not asking for responsibly sourced material now, don't forget my analogy about the responsible sourcing, research just the jewelry buying research that goes online first, all right, before they even come into your store. If they're not asking for it now, I guarantee you that future generations are more concerned about this, all right? And what we need to be very conscious of, I think synthetic gemstone materials have been around for hundreds of years. Synthetic rubies have been around since the 1880s. Yet somehow now there's coming a narrative that mining is bad for society. All right? And that's how it's being pushed to consumers through social media. Mining is bad. The irony that it's pushed through this is not lost on many people. 150 different minerals in one of these. So we as an industry have to have that shield of defense as to how jewelry benefits society. And you're right, Marcelo from Belmont talks so eloquently about the people in his business. So I think the jewelry industry needs to talk about the communities and the people, that the product that they provide, the impact that it makes on them, and then it's your wonderful job at the sales counter to talk about how beautiful it is, why it's valuable, but also try to see if there's some area to talk about and it benefits society. It's not going to be the main driver, but I guarantee you it'll improve your business over time.
And just a final thought on this. Maybe the question is not responsible product, non-responsible product, but you may get, if you're selling diamonds, you might get a customer coming in and saying, oh, I saw online lab-grown diamonds, synthetic diamonds, they're way more sustainable, they're way more green, and they're like, what are your diamonds? So they're not even looking for a responsible option. what are you going to answer? They're coming with claims, and you're like, well, I'm just buying from my suppliers, and that's not a bad thing. But I think that it might not always be so binary about is it ethical or not ethical. It's about knowing where your product comes from, and the more you know where it comes from, the more you can also tell stories. Maybe some of your jewelry is manufactured in Italy. You know that. You can tell that story. Maybe it's manufactured in the UK. Maybe it's in the Far East. Who knows? But just digging a little bit deeper, I'm sure those questions will come, and they may not just be about ethics. They might be about different things. Or why is it less expensive online than if I buy from you?
Yeah.
Well, because I've got suppliers that have, doing really great work or whatever.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, though.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Really
Thank you
critical.
so much for being so honest. We were a little bit worried at the beginning, there's not that many people in the audience, but I think this one person,
Turned out
all
to
of you, no, but I mean, I think it shows that it's important to have these discussions. So thank you very much, all of you, for attending this session. Thank you to our panelists.